Welcome to the Black Women Talk Tech podcast. I'm your host, Chelsea Lowe. Each episode features conversations with a Black woman founder building an innovative technology company. Black Women Talk Tech is a collective that identifies, supports, and encourages Black women to build the next billion-dollar business. Today, I have Nwamaka here with me. Nwamaka, thank you so much for joining us.
Thanks for having me, Chelsea.
So can you tell us a little bit about yourself and the business that you've built and what you all are working on?
Sure. So when I was the Chief Technology Officer and founder of GitLinks, I recently led our successful IP acquisition. We were acquired by a global enterprise software company called Infor. And GitLinks was basically a SaaS product that automated application security and license compliance for open source software. I built our product, hired and led our engineering team, pitched and helped to convince investors to fund us. I have 7 years of executive experience creating technology on both the entrepreneurship and industry side. I've founded 2 startups and exited both. I've hired and led teams of engineers at 3 companies, built and shipped 4 products all the way from idea to launch and operation. Additionally, I'm the inventor on 2 technology patents, and I've had a lot of fun just working on technologies all the way from machine learning, data science, big data, security, user interface design, systems design, infrastructure, and blockchain. So I have my master's degree in computer science from Cornell University, and I have a bachelor's in electrical engineering from the University of Houston.
Wow, what an impressive background. Really excited to dig into some of your experience with building technology.
Thank you.
I want to get started with your current company. Can you tell us, so you said you were recently acquired, but before the acquisition, what was the problem that your business was looking to solve?
Sure. So like I said, it was a SaaS product that automates application security and legal compliance. So we basically played in the risk management space. And there was an issue where companies are not even able to index and tell you, inventory, what the open source software they're using is, because developers have free range, freedom to bring in anything they want. And so a lot of companies we have talked to just saying, hey, can you even tell me what we're using? And doing everything in a manual or in an audited way was just too cumbersome and basically impossible. So we were able to automate that entire process, tell them what open source software is in their stack, and then also tell them every single day, you've got these security vulnerabilities, you've got these licenses that are restrictive, and if you could just update, you'd be able to get rid of these vulnerabilities. Or, there's a patch available here and you can get rid of any of these security issues. Be mindful of these licenses. They're not, they may clash, or they may, have legal risks associated with using it. And that was GitLinks in a nutshell.
Got it. And then who was your primary audience? Who was the target user? What type of companies?
So we sold to, large companies, enterprise companies that basically had a budget for security and the need to rein in and monitor all of their open source software and what their, developers and everything that was being used in their entire technology stack.
Great. So can you talk more about, you mentioned you had 2 patents. I'm really curious to know, or if you could share more about the experience you had, if you can share about what the technology was, or just in general, your experience with getting patents and advice for other entrepreneurs who are looking to go down that road.
Oh, sure. So I had actually secured these patents while I was during my time at Chevron, and they were technology patents that were related to oil and gas technologies being developed. It was really exciting time. I got to, team up with the professor and go down this entire journey with them. And I would say that there's a lot of legal things behind getting patents. And so you want to make sure that you have an idea that's, worthy of being defended, or I guess what's a better way to say that? An idea that's worthy of, going down this path, because it is intense. You have to make sure it's not obvious. You have to make sure if you have the patent, you likely are going to do something with the technology and, hopefully turn a profit into it, because the patent process is expensive and, the filing fees and all that. So I think for startups, if you're, because that was a bigger company. So that's, they have the budget, they have lawyers on staff to take care of all that. But I would say with startups, I would just caution, to make sure that you have a technology that makes sense to pursue, because the patent process is going to take a lot of your time away from actually running your startup. So if it's something that needs to be patented in order for your business to succeed or to thrive, and, maybe it's super competitive and in your intellectual property, then go for that. If it's not, then I would just say be very careful about pursuing that route. For GitLinks, though, I can say that we didn't have, we didn't pursue the patent route on that.
Got it. So in referring to that prototyping, that initial stage, can you share more about your founding team? I know you and your co-founder both attended Cornell Tech. Can you share more about, I guess, how you all were able to find each other and kind of advice for finding a co-founder?
Absolutely. So when I actually chose Cornell for a specific reason, I call it strategic education. So yeah, I knew that, after over all the schools that I was accepted to, I chose Cornell because they were ranked really high, 6th in computer science in the nation. But also they had this startup awards competition where they give a 6-figure investment to the winners. And so I formulated my team as a capstone project, and we were just working on an idea. And they said, Cornell said, you guys, if you want to be serious about it, we'll actually support you post graduation. And we pitched and won the 6-figure investment. And then from there, it was on. We started GitLinks, and that really helped to have Cornell be our very first investors. And the beauty of the program was they really pushed and encouraged us to form cross-functional teams. So if I'm computer science, they really wanted me to work with an MBA person. And that's how I met Ian, so that's how we formed our team. And it was a beautiful balance of the technical side, as well as having somebody who could, focus on the business development, customers, and all that.
So I know a lot of founders, or a number of founders, are looking for a technical co-founder. Do you have any advice on how do people find great candidates like yourself?
Yes. Well, I guess from even my experience, this might not be the route everybody can take, but it is one route that I can say works, is you really get close to people, you develop relationships, and you can sort out what types of personalities and what type of skill sets people have when you're in a close-knit environment to them. So you do have to find a way to get plugged in and be around folks enough for them to know you and for you to get to know them, and then determine whether you even want to start a business with them. So I found that the master's program was a perfect place to do that, because you're around folks and you're going to study with them, let's say for the first semester or first couple semesters, and then you'll see who you tend to gravitate towards, who has a great work ethic, who you really like, who you could see, starting a company with. So that is one strategy I know that works. And I can speak to that because in my previous company, EasyWeave, that I started, it was very difficult as a solo founder to wear every single hat. So everything from developing the technology and running the company and securing customers and everything, it's very taxing, it's very stressful. And so I knew that on my second go around, I wanted to form a solid team. And it turns out that even investors, they'll definitely look at the idea, but they will also look at the team and make sure that if your team is solid, then, they're more likely to invest than somebody who's just doing a solo founder.
Do you have any other advice for accessing capital. This is the conversation that keeps coming up around women, especially Black women founders, and the need for capital. Any other advice around that?
Yes. So I'm going to go back to the two things, actually. Cornell Tech. I'll talk about Cornell Tech first, and then I'll talk about accelerators. So Cornell Tech was monumental for us. Them taking the first bet on us and putting their money behind us gave us like social credibility. And basically we skyrocketed after that because in the investor world, they do look to see who else has put in money in you. And that's like the stamp of approval. And they'll look at that before they invest. So investors have this thing where they kind of look left and look right and see, is there anybody that I know or any friends or any other investors that have put their money where their mouth is? And it puts them at more comfortable, puts them at ease to invest. I did go with my CEO to a bunch of important pitches and investor meetings so that they could meet our leadership team. And then another really good way to access capital that we tapped into was participating in a few accelerators. So some of them were equity, one of them was not. And I would recommend equity accelerators because personally, I found that since they have skin in the game, they're much more apt to help you take your company to the next level. And then if you're going to give equity, I would caution that you should be selective and make sure that there's alignment between your company and that particular accelerator. Accelerators have a lot of different focuses. Some will focus on fashion tech, fintech. Some will focus on enterprise. Some will be generalists. Some will focus on the stage your company is. So just make sure there's alignment because you are giving up equity. But there are tons of accelerators in New York that are here to support early stage accelerators and accelerators for people of color, for women. If you're looking and maybe you're kind of questioning, how do I, go about finding the right accelerator? You can contact people that went through the program. So they have a cohort. You can contact the cohort prior to you, ask them what specifically about this program helped and what was their experience? How did they like it? And then also after the accelerator, how did that accelerator help them get to their next point of success? So just reach out to folks, try to find them on LinkedIn or however you can, and just, get their experience. So that way you can figure out, okay, well, it seems like it took them from point A to point B, which is pretty drastic or was a huge step up. So I would like to go and pursue that program and then maybe even get them to put a good word in for you or, tell you more about the application process. And I think that's a good resource to tap into. And I want to talk about the accelerator that we were in. I would highly recommend the Morgan Stanley Multicultural Innovation Lab. It was an accelerator that we were in, and it was monumental. It was so helpful throughout this, entire process. And they back you, they do fund you, and it is an equity program. But that program in particular was very helpful for us. And they want to support Black founders, Black female founders. So I would highly, I just wanted to plug that in.
Great. And then was there a key learning from that experience, or I guess the most valuable exercise or a standout speaker?
I would just say the leadership, the folks that are running that program, some people will say, yeah, they really want to help, but no, they put money behind you. They put time behind you. They set up, constant meetings and calls with you to say, how can we help? They're very well connected. And that's another thing that you have to, keep in mind is the connections that you have, your network is really what's going to be able to push you to success because you have to know people. And so it helps to be able to be, well connected with, and Morgan Stanley is a huge bank. So you want to be connected with bankers who can introduce you to anybody at a company. All of these things are very helpful. And then, them putting a significant amount of money into your company helps as well. So I would highly recommend the Morgan Stanley Accelerator.
So in building your company in New York City, can you talk more about the tech ecosystem in the greater New York area?
Sure. New York City, tech ecosystem was really amazing. It was growing at the time, and Cornell Tech was a huge reason that it was awesome. Amazon just recently came there, so I'm sure that's going to help out even a lot more. But they have a bunch of headquarters for technology companies there, and they have a lot of really good schools. And so when you have a combination of talent, as well as tech companies, as well as accelerators that are willing to invest, then that's a really good combination for technology ecosystem.
Great. And then can you share a business challenge that you faced in the earlier stages or while you were growing the company?
I would say actually, because we were actually fairly early stage, we were about 3 years in when we got acquired. I would say that an acquisition is not easy. So that was a huge challenge. I have maybe two or three pieces of advice if you're looking to go through an acquisition and you're finding it challenging, is to find your champion on the inside of the company. So people do business with people. It's not businesses doing business with business. It's people inside of a company doing business with another person or, people inside of another company. So find your champion. And that means somebody who cares about your product enough, cares and wants to, see your product through an acquisition, and also maybe has a tie to their line of work. So if they're working on a project and they identify that, oh man, this product or this company would be perfect under us, or, would really help me meet my goals or my target, then that's the person you want to, stick with and have them champion your stuff, because they know how to navigate inside their company. And you need somebody who cares enough to keep pushing you through the pipeline so you're not forgotten about and the deal doesn't just fizzle. The second piece of advice I would say is acquisitions can take a lot of time, and time though, but the downside is time kills deals. So I would say you have to sprint, like don't jog to the finish line, but really sprint and make sure that you're on it. You're contacting folks a bunch of times. Don't let it grow cold. Don't let a week or 2 weeks pass with no contact, no communication. So stay on it. And then lastly, when you're going through an acquisition, you should try to gather multiple term sheets. And a term sheet is basically a solid offer that's written on a piece of paper and gives you the summary of a deal. If you do that, you're able to leverage that in negotiations a lot when you're talking to a few different companies. That way you can have, leverage or an upper hand in the conversations. So those would be my 3 pieces of advice. And just from my experience in going through the challenge of an acquisition.
So did you, or was the plan always to, at that early stage, to get acquired, or did people reach out to your company?
Sure. So when we went through Cornell Tech, they talked a lot about keeping your eyes on the focus of what your business is going to actualize as. Do you want to take it through an acquisition or an exit, which can look like a merger, can look like an acquisition, different forms? Do you want to grow it to a certain point? Do you want to IPO, whatever your goal is? Is it more of a social type of, philanthropic type of program? Like whatever the goal is, you have to stick to that and then try to, make moves accordingly. Always keep that in the back of your mind. So you don't necessarily want to, pursue an acquisition because it takes a lot of your time. So you want to grow your company and keep in the back of your mind, okay, well, how are we going to hire? And if we were to exit, who are our potential acquirers, or who is playing in this space? And that even starts affecting how you build your product. So all these kind of things you want to keep in mind and then, go for it. So early on in GitLinks, we knew that, an acquisition was the goal, or an exit was the goal, because you want to return funds back to an investor. And in the security space, it turns out that a lot of products, companies prefer their security products to fall under, one kind of big blanket if they can. So rather than managing a bunch of different security products, they'd rather have it roll up all into one suite. So just identifying these, nuances about your line of business is going to help you a lot. And so we knew this was something that we wanted to pursue or, have happen as an exit. And the question just becomes when. So once you have folks knocking on your door, we had a bunch of folks knocking on our door, that's the time to strike or, evaluate. Do you feel like you're at a good enough point? Do you feel like you can, look at your valuation and get a good enough return back for your investors? All of that kind of stuff you want to look at and then determine whether you get an acquisition. But like I said, you do want to try to get multiple offers on the table during that same time period.
What are you working on currently?
Sure. So I guess life after acquisition is, it's really great. I'm spending time with family and just really getting back to a balance. A startup does take a lot out of you. So I would love to just kind of, take time to smell the roses. But I am looking for what the next opportunity is. I'm definitely excited to see what's next. But I probably will take just a bit of a break away from creating startups, just to, balance out family, friends, and everything else that I wasn't able to do while building startups. I would say for like the past 7 years, because it requires 100% of your dedication. So I'm looking forward to enjoying life, basically.
It sounds like you've definitely earned it.
Thank you. I appreciate it.
So do you have any other advice for Black women tech founders?
The road will be tough. I think the highs are extremely high. Like, they're exhilarating. The lows, though, will be painstaking. And it's something they talked about at length. And I hear people talk about it, but until you get into it and experience it, that's when you really have an appreciation of what's happening. My best advice is to get a solid support system. So set up your life so that you're surrounded by people who have your best interests at heart, who care about you deeply, and who understand your need and your destiny to be an entrepreneur. And those are going to be the people that you need to encourage you along the way. It'll definitely come in handy. So eventually you realize that there is no experience that was in vain. Every experience pushed you through and served as the building blocks that will propel you to your next great opportunity. And then my last piece of advice is, as a Black woman, lean on your community as much as possible. We do have very unique experiences, and you will need your people to support you through this journey. And that has worked really well for me.
Great. Well, thank you so much for sharing your story, and we're excited to see what comes next for you.
Thank you, Chelsea. I appreciate it. And thanks for having me on.
Thank you for listening. I'm your host, Chelsea Lowe. More resources for Black women tech founders are available at blackwomentalktech.com. This podcast was produced by the Enterprise Center's The Grit Studios. Links to resources mentioned are available in the show notes below. If you enjoyed this episode, please subscribe on Apple Podcasts, Spotify, Google Podcasts, or wherever you listen to podcasts. Catch you next time on the Black Women Talk Tech podcast.